Okay, so attacking the queen side now is completely fruitless because this structure holds on its own. So what we have to do is we have to obviously tackle the king side. And our bishop alone can't tackle the king side. And our king alone can't tackle the king side. But what do we have on the king side? We got these guys. So we gotta thrust those guys forward and try to create a weakness on the king side, because that's the only way we can make progress. Nothing we can do on the queen side allows us to make progress. Nothing we can do in the center allows us to make progress. Again, if king e5, king e7. So the only thing we have left are these pawns. The question is, how do we do it? Do we go nice and slow, h3, f3, g4, f4, h4? What are we trying to do? What are we trying to do? So it doesn't really matter which order, but we're going to try to just push these pawns forward as much as possible. So white chose h4. Again, the order is not super important. Black plays king e7, f4. Notice that white's not afraid of a lockup after, say, f5, because notice that all these pawns would be on light squares. So this king basically has to babysit them because he always has to worry about a bishop g8 and then winning all the pawns. So black's going to try to move those pawns as little as possible. So after f4, black played h6. If black plays the move h5, now white has this idea to play king e5 followed by f5, and that's actually very strong. Because notice that this pawn would become a weakness that the bishop could easily attack. And notice that this knight is kind of dominated by this bishop, right? Okay, so he played h6 instead. Okay, so we kind of pushed the kingside pawns a little bit. What now? Okay, so an important motif in these endgames, in these bishop versus knight endgames, is this idea of dominating this knight. So what square dominates this knight? Yeah, very good. So bishop c4. Now notice that this knight has no forward moves without the bishop attacking it. So when you have this bishop 3 squares away from a knight like that, the bishop is said to dominate the knight. So notice that black is slowly running out of moves here. He obviously doesn't want to push any of the queenside pawns. He doesn't really want to move this knight because it potentially allows king d5, king c6 ideas. And these kingside pawns he doesn't want to really move. And notice that a4 does not do the same thing because this knight has this square and then this square. So a4 is actually a big mistake. But bishop c4 is correct. So black plays knight e6. Okay. So now the question is, do we take this? Or do we do something else? And if we don't take it, what do we do? Okay, which pawns? Okay. So the right pawn to push is actually to push g4. Yeah. So we don't... f5 is a bit premature. But g4 is the ticket. So now black has nothing better than to retreat the knight. Knight c7. Notice if he goes knight c5 check or something, we just play king d5. And now on king d7 we play bishop b5. Check. And now if the king goes this way, we infiltrate. And if the king goes this way, we play here. And now notice we win a pawn. So black has nothing better than knight c7. Okay, now what? f5, g5, 10 b5, free pawn, unless you have something magical that I'm unaware of. Okay, so knight c7. Oh, yeah. The problem with b5 is it allows this square. It allows my king to reach that square. That's the problem with that. So yeah, you don't want to push those pawns. You don't want to put any of your pawns on light squares, because then you have to keep your knight on c7 to defend it, or you have to play a6. And if you play a6, then that's even more pawns on light squares, and then my king can get through on the dark squares. So yeah. Okay, but what does white play here? I mean, black is almost in zugzwang here, meaning that any move he makes worsens his position. So how do we get him into a zugzwang? Bishop f7 doesn't quite work because the king can take. We don't want to give up our bishop for just that pawn. But what can we do to force black to basically make some sort of concession? a3, just wait him out. Okay, but there's a better move to wait him out than a3. You guys are missing it. King e5 is the answer, guys. King e5. So the point is, now black really doesn't have a move. Can't really move his king. Can't really move his knight. Now our threat is we want to play f5 and f6, which means our king either gets to d6 or this bishop wins this pawn. So black has to make some sort of concession here. And the concession he makes is he plays f6 check.
Check.
Yep, so black plays f6. We move our king back. And now notice again how he's sort of in zugzwang. He can't really move his king forward because of bishop f5 followed by king f5. He can't really move his knight again. We play king d5 and king c6. So he has to go king f8. Okay. Now is the real trick. The trick is, which pawn do we push? 3 choices. 33% chance. Which one? This is not easy, by the way. So if you get this right, you should feel good. It's not a trick question. Usually I do get trick questions. You're right, but this one's not a trick question. This one's not a trick question. So yeah, and again, if you get this right, you should feel proud because this is not easy. No takey backies. No takey backies. Okay, so the natural move is g5, right? The reason being we want to fix this pawn on a light square. But it turns out that the routine move is not the right move. So if you guys said h5, you guys are right. h5 is the right move. Okay, so let's just look at quickly why g5 is not right. So the reason is hg, hg, and now king e7. And now the problem is I have two threats. I have this one, and I have this one. And it's actually tough now, because with the limited material, if my king gets to f6, you can never progress. And it's hard for your bishop to get to this pawn. Because if you move your bishop back, I have knight e6. If you move your king back, I have pawn takes pawn. So, yeah, f5 is terrible. Just take with check and take, and this is just a dead draw. Actually, probably black's better, because now the pawns are on one side of the board. So, the right move is h5. Okay, so black plays g5. And now, okay, f5 is literally the worst move on the board. So you need to make sure you keep this square unoccupied, because that's the only way you can win. So yeah, you just take first. No reason to play king f5 right away. But yeah, I mean, you are going to play king f5. So fg5, fg5, king f5, okay. So now, king g7. I got to stop king g6, obviously. And now what? And now what? Yeah, very good. The old juke. The old juke. King e5, right. So now notice that we forced this king all the way over to g7. So we juked him. We went king f5, juking king g6, but in fact we're actually going this way.